It's time now for the political analysis of Fromm and Fuller. Al Fromm, former political advisor to President Bill Clinton, and Craig Fuller, former political advisor to both Presidents Ronald Reagan and George H.W. Bush. Good morning, all. Craig, I think it's your turn. It was kind of appropriate that the last GOP debate was at the Ronald Reagan Library, the home of your old boss. I don't know what really was accomplished last night, but I thought that we should have a discussion about possible winners and losers. Craig, what's your thoughts?
Well, I'm not exactly sure what happened either, and I watched the whole thing. It's the morning after at the Reagan Library. I'm not actually there, but I thought I would put up the image of an institution that's remarkable in its own right. I think one thing that didn't happen, I'm kind of more interested in some things didn't happen, is that none of the candidates really took advantage of the fact that they were on these, for Reaganites, the hallowed grounds of the Reagan Library. I mean, they could have talked about some of the things he did as president and how it stands in contrast either to Trump or to Biden. Instead, it was kind of a free-for-all. I thought that probably people whoever you were backing, you probably walked away with being able to say something good about the performance. I really thought Nikki Haley did a good job. I thought Chris Christie, actually had a much stronger performance in this discussion or forum than he did in the past. He was certainly forceful. He had sound bites, to be sure, referring to Donald Trump as Donald Duck, is bound to get you a headline here or there, which it did today. But overall, the content, wasn't, I would say, as strong as one might like. One of the reasons I liked Nikki Haley's performance is she came back to, content whenever she could, when she wasn't debating whether she paid for the drapes and or not, which was kind of a silly thing to say. She did say, I thought one of the factoids of the night, which really is unbelievable, but it gets to this issue that Al and I have talked about, where you have to relate to people. And one of the fears I think people have is fentanyl and drugs. And to say that fentanyl in a 12-month period has killed more people than the Vietnam War, the Iraqi War, or the Afghanistan War, more Americans, is phenomenal. And the fact check this morning is indeed, it's true. 73,000 plus people in a 12-month period. It's unbelievable. And that's the kind of thing that I do think sticks with people, although I don't know how many were watching. One thing, neither Al nor I are big fans of polling at this point in terms of some of these contests. There was a CBS poll released, an YouGov and CBS poll that I thought was pretty interesting. And it gets to what we've also talked about, and that is this may be more open than some of the pundits want to give credit to. In Iowa, for example, this recent polling shows that only 20% of the registered Republicans in Iowa, 20% are locked into Trump. 31% are not considering Trump. And it leaves a lot of people, looking at all the candidates. And the same is, in a way, is true in New Hampshire. 23% solidly for Trump, 34% anyone but Trump. So while the tenor of this discussion last night might be something you question, the truth is, for voters in these early states, caucus in Iowa, primary election in New Hampshire that'll take place right after the first of the year, they're still looking. And I think that's something we need to remember, that we don't decide elections, as somebody said, based on the polling. We decided on the actual votes of voters. And I think a lot of voters out there are still trying to figure out the path forward for 2024.
Al, I'd be very eager to hear your point of view. It is amazing from my point of view that no one has really risen to that second position that would really be a threat to Donald Trump at this point. Both of you have said that you have some concerns about whether Donald Trump will be a candidate in 2024. But why isn't there somebody rising? Why?
Well, first of all, my guess is this debate will have little or no effect at all on the nomination. I watched a focus group of Iowa voters on CNN, and the number one thing I got out of it was they thought it was unruly, and candidates shouting at each other. It is a battle for second place. I suppose that you'd have to say that Nikki Haley has sort of emerged as the leader in the battle for second place, probably with Ron DeSantis. But what I found really distinguishing about the debate was what was missing. And I think there's a big problem with having Fox do the debates, because Fox has its own agenda. It does all these crazy videos and it tries to set things in its context. But what it was the context of this debate? You have a front runner who has on his own social media site said he wanted to terminate the Constitution, and then, as if to prove it, over the last weekend said he wanted to execute the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff for trying to protect the country and keep us out of nuclear war. He said he wanted to shut down, I think, NBC because they're too critical of him. He wants to put his political opponents in jail. He wants to defund the Justice Department. He wants to have a shutdown, so we defund the Justice Department so there's no money to prosecute him. Most importantly, 2 days before the debate, a judge in New York found his company guilty of fraud, took away his business license. I mean, he can't, when this is all over, he's not going to be able to practice business in New York, but he's still front runner of the nomination for president. And not one of the candidates, not one of the anchors raised any of this. I mean, Donald Duck is a cute line, and I retweeted it last night because I thought it was pretty funny. But that's not Trump's problem. Trump's problem is unfit to be president. He is acting more and more deranged every day, and nobody is willing to take him on. And how do you beat him if you don't take him on? As I said, I thought that to be Nikki Haley's the only person on that stage who is worthy of being a presidential candidate. I heard some people say Ron DeSantis was better than the first time. Maybe so. It's just that he memorized his lines a little better, but he looked just as awkward in giving them. And when in the post debate interview with Gavin Newsom, governor of California, who I thought would have been the winner of the debate, and he debated because he completely was above the class of all of the Republican candidates. He pointed out, which happened to be true, and Nikki Haley pointed this out during the debate, only not quite as crystally clear as Gavin did. DeSantis was lying about fracking. He issued an executive order to prevent it. He may have not fallen flat on his face. He stood up through the whole debate, I suppose, but I don't think it'll do anything to keep him from continuing to slide. The other thing I thought Nikki Haley missed an opportunity to do was she's the only candidate on that stage who in a matchup with Biden is outside the margin, wins outside the margin of error. She didn't take advantage of that. You asked Craig about the site of the Reagan Library. Well, unfortunately, and I sort of feel like this sometimes with my own party, but this is not Republicans are not the party of Ronald Reagan anymore. And I guarantee you there was no Ronald Reagan in that room.
Greg, I wanted to follow up, the other side of these kind of debates is that it probably forces some candidates to drop out. And I was wondering if you all had some thoughts on who will have to eventually withdraw from the race as we get closer to Iowa.
Well, it has to happen pretty soon, I think, but I think they're in there. It's partly it's going to be money. Who can raise the money? And if the money shifts to more, as it seems to be, some of the major donors to Nikki Haley, that may cause some to think twice about it. I don't know how many times some of these candidates with very low numbers want to go through this process. Even Vice President Pence, who, tried to make a strong showing, is so far down, it just doesn't make much sense. I do think that one of the low points in the evening has to go to Dana Perino, who actually is a friend of mine, but when she asked them to write down, who should get voted off the island, it was ridiculous. And DeSantis called her out for that, and Governor DeSantis gets credit for that. Of course, it gave Governor Christie the chance to take another shot at Donald Trump, which I think Al is right. I would end by saying I think that they're running for number two is kind of a fool's errand. I mean, if they're not going to take on the front runner, and there's plenty to take on, they're just kind of competing with each other to be an also ran. And you know what? Breaking news. Donald Trump released them from any concern that they might be a vice presidential choice should he run, when he said none of them are qualified as far as he's concerned. So why are they holding back? Why don't they go after the front runner along with Chris Christie and maybe one will emerge. I think we're in it though for a while. Certainly to the end of the year, maybe through Iowa. But when people start going to the polls, if the Republican field doesn't narrow, incredibly, Donald Trump could survive.
Al, anybody you think should drop out or will drop out?
Well, I think I can name you 6 who should drop out. The amazing thing, and Craig alluded to this, Trump is not nearly as strong in those early contests as his overall national polling. He's got this bravado about him that probably keeps his poll numbers artificially high. But the news for Trump is not going to get better over the next 3 or 4 months. I mean, what is it? Starting Monday, we're going to have the trial to. That New York case was really incredible because the judge basically made the judgment on the case that the attorney general made against Trump and the Trump defense, and said, we don't even have to go to a trial. It's so obvious. When you say the apartment you live in is 3 times the size that it is, so you can borrow more money against it, that's fraud. You don't have to have a jury to decide that. But in any event, we're going to go into damages on that, and I can't believe that that's going to be particularly helpful. Look, Mike Pence is a nice, pious man who is not worthy of national office in my view. DeSantis, I think, will eventually crash and burn. I've thought that since the beginning. Vivek seems to have diminished. I love the way Christie tries to go after Trump. I think he could have done it much more effectively if he had gone after him on the real issues and concerns instead of trying to be cute with Donald Duck. But and the bravado was, he was playing to Trump's emotion, not to the message that had to be delivered to the audience. He was, Donald, you're afraid of me. But the real problem is the reason he's afraid is not afraid of him. He's afraid of having everything that he's done exposed. But the problem with Christie is Christie's negative rating in a CNN poll I saw last night is just about as high as Trump's positive rating. There's no prayer for Chris Christie. So, let him deliver some more blows. Tim Scott seems like a very nice man, but he just, he is not in the class of Nikki Haley from the same state. And the way I listened to the governor from North Dakota last night, and my gosh, North Dakota is perfect. Of course, it doesn't have any people. It's all white. And it has none of the problems that the rest of the real country has, the rest of the country has. So, I mean, I think all of them ought to drop out.
Yeah.
Let me just say this. I don't know that they will. I think some of them probably won't get into the next debate. Probably Pence might not get into the next debate. That's what I'm hearing. But what an opportunity for Larry Hogan and Chris Sununu and the good people, you know, who want to save the Republican Party of Ronald Reagan to get together and bring in the donors and have a summit and call on these guys to drop out and try to get the donors to focus on Nikki Haley as the person to go one-on-one on Trump. And I think if that happened, we'd, to be honest with you, I think there'd be a very good chance Nikki Haley be the next president of the United States. But what seems to be lacking, it was lacking in the candidates last night, and seems to be lacking among leadership in the Republican Party. And I don't mean, the party chairman. I mean the people who are really the leaders of the party, the governors and key office holders. They just don't seem to have the courage to take on Trump. Maybe they think that Trump will call for their execution too. But whatever it is, you can't, you're not going to derail him if nobody takes him on. And he seems to me, I mean, I understand that he's got this solid base. I understand that, he has a very high floor. But boy, I can't believe that most people, most decent people, can look at everything he's done. He's a fraud from day one of his life. He's been accused. He's been called a rapist by a judge. He's been found guilty of his whole empire being a fraud. His foundation was put out of business. He faces 91 counts of stealing, including stealing national security secrets and trying to lead an insurrection against the country. I just can't believe that if that case is put out every day by these candidates and by Republican leaders over the next 3 months, that they couldn't beat him in Iowa, New Hampshire, and then for the nomination. I just can't believe it. But where is the courage? This country needs a strong conservative party, but it can't get it if the people who have to lead it are afraid to make the fight to keep it.
Greg, switching channels a little bit, on the Democratic side, Bob Menendez, the senator from New Jersey, has now been indicted on corruption charges. This is the second time that I know of that this has happened to him. There is some pressure for him to resign, but this comes at a time when the Democrats would like to put the spotlight on Republican transgressions. What's your take on that bit of news?
First, I want to say well said to Al on the last topic. On the Robert Menendez issue, here's an individual who got elected to the school board when he was 20 years old, and he's just continued in politics all along. Now he's in late 60s, I think. He's run afoul of the law, investigations, hints of corruption for a long time. People who know him best aren't surprised. I mean, this is a bad guy. I mean, and there's a certain percentage of people in every organization that just can't live within the boundaries of the law. And I think the complaint against him, the indictment against him is pretty clear. That there are real serious legal issues. He should resign. You can try to figure out what the numbers are going to be, but a Democrat will get appointed. And it is a cloud, and it doesn't make any sense to have it sit there. I think, and my guess is that his fellow Democrats almost unanimously wish he would just go away. They're trying to figure out where they should fall on this, in their public statements, but they certainly do not want to have to go into 2024 with a trial of Senator Menendez, and he's probably they said the investigation continues. He probably has further issues. I mean, it's unlikely to me that he would only deal with one government and two or three foreign nationals in order to reap hundreds of thousands of dollars. If he's going to do that once, he's probably going to do it somewhere else. So I don't think the facts are going to get any better for him. He's chose a path, and he's going to have to step up and deal with the consequences, I think.
Al, you have the last word this week.
Well, when I heard about Senator Menendez indictment and the gold bars in his closet, it reminded me of my old friend Bill Jefferson, who was convicted of fraud because he had cold cash. He kept his cash in his freezer. I guess they're the two. Well, actually, you could add Mayor Kwame Kilpatrick, three people over the lifetime of the DLC who are battling for the worst scandal of a DLC member. But look, I think the Senate Democrats have done the only thing that they probably really can do, which is take away his chairmanship. I think he should resign. I haven't checked the rules of the Senate, but I think maybe once you're seated, the only way you can be forced out is by your voters. I guess you could be expelled, but I think he should resign. If he believes he's innocent, he can resign. Let the governor, who's a Democrat, appoint a new senator, and then Menendez can run again next year. And if the people return him, that's fine. But it's awful. I mean, I don't know whether Craig's assumption is right that there are other countries involved, but this one, it looks like essentially his wife, before they were married, was an agent of the Egyptian government. At least I think that's implied, if not stated, in the indictment. So this whole deal could be one where essentially the marriage was an effort to infiltrate the chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee. But it sure doesn't look good. If the caucus can remove him, they have removed him as chairman, and they should. I think he should be removed from the Senate. I don't think. My guess is you never get the votes to expel, because the Republicans would want to protect him because they've got a little legal problem of their own. But he should go.
We have to leave it there. Al Fromm, Craig Fuller, thank you so much indeed. We will see you next week.